Well, welcome everyone to this informational webinar about a new partnership between NASA's Universe of Learning and Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory is part of that consortium, and the Smithsonian Affiliations. On the line right now, we have myself from the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, Erica Wright, who is also on the Universe of Learning team here from the Astrophysical Observatory. Also presenting today will be our colleagues who are in the lead institution, the Space Telescope Science Institute, which is the lead institution for NASA's Universe of Learning team. Tim Rue, informal education specialist, is here. And Brandon Lawton, who has just made himself visible on the screen and will be presenting shortly. So we're all presenting from the Universe of Learning team, which is actually includes many other institutions as well you'll learn about in a bit. But from the Smithsonian Affiliation side on the line, the specific contacts for this Universe of Learning partnership are Caroline Ma, who is on the line, Christina DeMeglio Lopez, who I think is on the phone. Oh no, you've joined the Zoom as well. Excellent. And Patty Artiega, who is going to be joining this partnership and helping be a contact with all the affiliations. So that's kind of your contacts and the presenters. And without further ado, I'm going to get started. I just as a bit of housekeeping, we're recording the webinar just in case there's other affiliations later who want to take a look at it. And Erica will be monitoring the chat box. So as myself and Brandon and Tim are presenting and you have questions, feel free to enter them there. And there'll be a time for a group question and answer along the way as well. All right. Well, so what we're going to cover, we'll give you a little bit of background on the Universe of Learning program, which is funded through NASA's Science Mission Directorate. We're going to introduce the affiliations, U of L, and we'll start using the acronym U of L. You'll see it on slides in the future, so that stands for Universe of Learning. We'll introduce this partnership, and we'll talk about the professional development, that kind of learning, both for us at U of L and for affiliations that is going to go on as a part of this partnership. So we'll kind of give an overview of that. And so actually, without further ado, I'm actually going to hand the baton over to Brandon to talk about, or possibly to, let me see, I think I know who.
Tim and Brandon have got
Tim and Brandon, okay, Tim and Brandon.
Next couple here. Brandon and I, this is Tim Rue from the Space Telescope Science Institute. Brandon and I are actually sitting next to each other, so we're sharing one audio. It may look like he's talking, but it's really me. We are going to first give you a really brief introduction to what the Universe of Learning is. So we are basically trying to share NASA astrophysics with people across the nation. We're a cooperative agreement between 5 different partner organizations in NASA. You can see them there at the bottom of your screen: Sonoma State in California, the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory up in Cambridge, us, Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, IPAC, which is the Infrared Processing and Analysis Center out at Caltech in California, and JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, specifically their exoplanet exploration program, also at Caltech in Pasadena. And we are really trying to help people around the country gain access to some of the astrophysics that NASA is doing, not just at our institutions, but all throughout NASA. I'm going to let Brandon talk a little bit about what NASA astrophysics is.
All right, so that's on the next slide. Okay, So you'll notice at the bottom of this slide, there are 16 little postage stamps that represent current and future NASA astrophysics missions. These are not all NASA astrophysics missions, but they are 16 current and future ones that have a lot of visibility right now. And the universe of learning takes the science and the messages and the stories from these 16 missions, as well as past astrophysics missions and other future missions that have yet to launch. Now, we want to create these stories, and the way that NASA Science Mission Directorate houses these stories are really into three categories, these three questions you see on the screen here. So we'll just briefly explain those three questions. The first, how does the universe work? That explores the building blocks of our existence, the matter, energy, space, and time, and how they behave in the physical conditions of the universe. How did we get here? Describes the origins of the universe and the objects in our universe, galaxies, stars, and planets. The third question, are we alone? Explores planets beyond our solar system and the potential they have for habitability. So again, those are the three big questions, and how we create storylines and how we create themes really fit into those three categories. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This slide is, we won't go too much into this in this webinar, but really the basics is, people often ask, why do you need all those missions, right? And really it is because those missions all have strengths in observing different parts of what we call the electromagnetic spectrum, which is this plot you see here. And there are a few astrophysics missions on this plot, not all of them, but just to give you an idea. And so on the left, going from left to right, you have high energy wavelengths or types of light on the left, and you have lower energy wavelengths on the right. So you have gamma ray, X-ray, ultraviolet, visible light, infrared, microwave, and radio. And the colored lines that reach different depths into our atmosphere, that really just tells you how far that type of light can reach us if we're observing on the ground. So if you're observing on the ground, you can of course observe visible light and radio, but to observe things like ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma ray, some infrared, you need to get up into the upper atmosphere or into space. And so that's really why we have all of these missions, really to capitalize on the technologies required to observe those different types of light and to put those pieces of the puzzle together really to understand those three big questions. Okay, so you go on to the next slide. So the Universe of Learning program benefits from the connection to the scientists and all of our organizations across NASA Astrophysics. And this is one example in how we get the NASA science to various audiences, including informal learning centers and folks like yourself, how we get that to you quickly. So this is an example of the TRAPPIST discovery that was announced last, was it February? March? February? Last February. And if you recall, the TRAPPIST system was that they discovered multiple Earth-sized planets around a single star. And what you'll notice on the top left there is the article, the journal article that came out. And we worked directly with the scientists to create that, to move that science from the actual scientific paper into communications, which you see on the right, which is an actual screenshot of the NASA press release using what's called Eyes on Exoplanets, which is a resource that we have in the Universe of Learning to explore this new planetary system, and quickly then turn those communications and those tools and all the resources we build to communicate the news into all of our products and programs in the Universe of Learning, including informal education products like that screenshot you see at the bottom, which is from ViewSpace, which I believe we will talk a little bit more about later. Okay.
So if you want to go to the next slide. So really, we want to give you a basic idea of Universe of Learning. We're trying to share NASA astrophysics with the nation. And we're doing that through giving people access to mission data, through various tools and participatory experiences. We're creating multimedia, immersive experiences, exhibits, community programs. And more importantly to what we're doing today, we're providing professional development to educators like many of you to actually be empowered to take all of this content and share it with your local audience. You guys are the experts in those local audiences, and we need your help in order to really share this out. And that last point on there, providing resources for diverse audiences and special needs, we're trying to grow our audience beyond the typical folks who are involved in astrophysics. And education is a huge portion of that. So that's a major goal of what we're doing as well. So now that's a little bit about universal learning. I'm going to hand it back to Mary, and she'll talk a little bit about how you guys can help us with all of that.
Let me, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what the essential elements of this partnership are. And basically, after this webinar, we hope that many of you will sign up to become part of a community of practice over the next couple of months during the fall months. And that community of practice, we will be holding webinars to introduce you to universe of learning resources, both the science, the cutting edge discoveries, and the science behind the astrophysics themes that Brandon and Tim just talked about, and introducing you to educational activities as well. For example, on this slide, on the left side of the slide, the team at Space Telescope Science Institute has developed this program called Girls STEAM Ahead that engages informal programs that engage girls in STEM, and they have a bunch of resources to share that you might want to know about. On the upper right of the slide is a screenshot from another universe of learning resource called Eyes on Exoplanets, which is this incredible 3D visualization engine to look at where we're discovering all these alien worlds. And that's an example of a resource that can become part of a program or an exhibit. So anyway, professional development, mini funds to kickstart your project. What does that mean? Well, the partnership, after this community of practice period of time where we share information about resources, there'll be an application period where you can apply for $2,000, a little small award to implement a program of your choice using resources of your choice to engage audiences in some content area related to the universe of learning themes of how the universe works and viewing the universe across the spectrum and exoplanets. The third, so the community of practice and this professional development are the key essential elements. But we also, you would have access to a whole network of scientists and educators to help you design a project. So if you need science expertise because you want to design a little exhibit, or you want to create some sort of science talk or video Q&A with a scientist around your topic for your audiences, you have access to a whole host of expertise from the Universe of Learning team. So those are the key elements of this partnership. And let me go to the next slide here. And here's kind of what we hope you'll get out of it and what we hope to get out of it. For affiliates, we hope that whether or not you ended up getting the mini funds, because there are the budget is limited, and so there's 40 people on this call, which is great. We don't have 40 institutions worth of mini funds, but whether or not you got them, we hope that by participating in the community of practice, you would discover universe of learning NASA content and resources that would be accessible and relevant for work that you're doing in your own institution, that you yourself would learn some new things in the area of astronomy, and that you'd learn some things about how to access and use NASA data that you might not have known about before, and that you'd be able to actually create programming or exhibits or events based on the materials and resources that you learn about. What we hope to get out of it is all of you have incredible expertise in many different areas in creating programming for your specific audiences. And whether you're from history museums or art museums or natural history museums or space museums, you may have an interesting new take on how to use these NASA resources and share them with the public. And so we really are looking forward to seeing your ideas. Ultimately, what we hope is that the collaboration ends up producing shareable strategies. Basically, many of you will implement programs that relate audiences to the NASA science and discovery that can be shared with other institutions. And so that's really what we hope to come out of the partnership. So now I'm going to, I think, go back to Tim or Brandon to describe how the professional development will work, which will kind of kick off in August through October. And Brandon or Tim?
Yes. So the professional development is open to any of you to participate, as Mary was saying earlier, and we hope that you do participate and take advantage of this. We're going to have 7 sessions, hour-long sessions, every other week. They're going to start in August, should run through about the end of October, and each of these sessions is going to be made of a couple different parts. We're going to go through some of the science so that you've got a little bit of a background in it, and also talk about the typical knowledge that many of your visitors may have in some of these content areas. And we'll be doing that both with some of our subject matter experts, the actual scientists and astronomers that are at our sites. They'll be coming in to talk to you. And we'll also have some of our educators like myself or Mary. And we will also be sharing specific resources, and I'll be going through those in just a moment, some of the ways that you can take them and pull them into your own programs. We'll talk about some things people have done in the past, and we're going to ask you to try and come up with some ideas over the course of those sessions about how you can work with your own audience. The 7 sessions are all going to be focused on those 3 big ideas that Brandon was talking about earlier. Those 3 big questions of NASA. The first session is going to be a big introduction to that, and then there'll be a pair of sessions on each of the other questions. So the first one, how does the universe work? We're going to talk about basically what the universe is at first. What's a galaxy? What's a nebula? What's a star? And then we'll go into understanding the electromagnetic spectrum a little bit and how different parts of that spectrum can tell us different things about how the universe interacts with itself. Next, we'll be moving on to how do we get here, the origins of everything. We'll talk a little bit about how space and time are very often the same thing when you're looking at astrophysics. The further out you look, the further back in time you get towards the beginnings of everything. And we'll talk about the changing universe, about how all of these different pieces have developed throughout the years. We'll finish up with the last 2 sessions talking about are we alone, talking about exoplanets and life. How do we find exoplanets in the first place? And how do we find habitable planets or potential signs of habitability or clues that something might be out there? And there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening now, and that's going to be happening in the future that we'll be able to connect you with and you'll be able to connect your audience with. So if we can go to the next slide, we can show you a little bit of the resources. Brandon mentioned the TRAPPIST system earlier that was released back in February. You see on your screen just some simple screenshots of a whole bunch of resources that we put together about just that one discovery. On the top left is Eyes on Exoplanets, and that is an actual interactive tool that anybody can access online, but there are a number of museums that actually have this as part of an exhibit. And you can go in and find out details about the system, move around, click on the screen, drag on the screen, find out all sorts of fun details. On the top middle, you can see one of NASA's travel posters that we produce. Those are to give people kind of a imaginative, evocative idea of what it might like to be in space. They're not actually what things look like. They're artist impressions, but they are great for getting imaginations going and getting people really impassioned about space. On the top right, you can see another screenshot from that ViewSpace piece that Brandon mentioned earlier. ViewSpace is more of a passive and didactic resource that we have. It's playing in about 200 museums, libraries, planetarium, other informal education sites around the country. It's part of an exhibit, and there are ways to integrate that into actual activities on the floor as well. We've been started playing with VR and 360 images. You can see one of those on the bottom right. This one's not actually interactive, but if you were to access this on the web, you could look at an artist's impression of what it might look like on one of the TRAPPIST planets, look up in the sky and see different planets from the surface of this one, get an idea of what maybe it might be like. And then the bottom left two pictures are a couple of other resources that are meant to be used in person. It's basically a scale model of the TRAPPIST system. You can see it set up there on the left. It can be used either as a discovery card activity. It can be used as an actual little pop-up exhibit if you are a smaller organization that doesn't have the staffing to be able to run something with it. And there are probably some other ways as well. And we, again, really want to find out how you can take advantage of all of these resources and create something. So I'm going to pass it back to Mary, and she will continue on talking about the mini funds.
Okay. A couple of questions that have come on the chat while Tim was talking, I just wanted to address. One is the series of webinars. While we hope that as many people can join them live as possible, they will be recorded, all of them, so that there are ways to get that information asynchronously. And also that the community of practice includes not only the live webinars, but we'll have an online discussion forum just for affiliates where you can ask questions of the Universe of Learning team, where all these resources, there'll be links to them on that community of practice online forum. And so there's an opportunity to be part of the group all along the way. So starting in November, we'll open up an application for these mini funds, which are really intended as seed money for implementing some sort of program, event, exhibit of your choice that uses Universe of Learning resources. We understand that $2,000 isn't enough to do a whole program, but we hope that it's an incentive to do a program that seems interesting to you and that you, along with all the in-kind support of help, advice, and lots of free resources. So basically the application will open in November. We would be making decisions in January, and you would, the funding that would come from our affiliate headquarters folks you'd end up getting a kind of the bulk of the funding to implement, and then a final payment after you implement it and fill out a final report. Let's see. Here is what we would look for in the application for mini funds. We kind of require that the proposed activity would use Universe of Learning resources, and we if you propose an event or an exhibit or a program that you kind of document how you did it so that it's potentially transferable to other organizations. And then one of the requirements of being able to apply is that you've participated in the online community of practice. That doesn't mean you have to have gone to all the webinars, but that you are an active participant over the course of those webinars and on the community of practice. So we're very interested in, NASA is always trying to reach out to audiences that are underserved by STEM learning opportunities. And so those of you who have opportunities to target those audiences and really engage them in unique programming, that's a plus. And also, this being the affiliate community, we're really interested in multidisciplinary takes on engaging audiences with this content. I've seen a few of you from different kinds of organizations, like I can imagine a health museum. Of course, there's all these different ways, you know, that we image the human body over multiple wavelengths. Maybe there's a connection you can make between using multiple wavelengths in medicine and using multiple wavelengths in space exploration. We have the Museum of Design in Atlanta. Certainly the design and engineering process for developing some of these astrophysics satellites and missions like the James Webb Telescope. That's quite a design and engineering feat, and maybe there's some program you could do there. Those of you who are history organizations, there's certainly ways in which you might bring new insight to thinking about how NASA views the universe and how it has over time. So we're really interested in unique takes that you can bring to Universe of Learning program. And to bring your own creativity to it. That's really why we're partnering with such a great network as the Affiliations Network. So if you're awarded the seed funding, the $2,000 in mini funds, basically that would come with the expectation that you would then develop and implement some sort of program with real audiences. Program, as I say, program could mean an exhibit, it could mean an event, some sort of special event, or it could be an exhibit. That you use the resources, some combination of resources along with other resources that you may have access to, that you learn about during the Universe of Learning Professional Development Series. And finally, that you document and share what you've done. So the last deliverable would be to fill out a report that documents what resources you used, how you did what you did, and that also has you reflecting on what worked and what didn't. So if someone else were to try to do a similar event, they could learn from your experience. So I think right now we're open for Q&A. The next step for you after this webinar would be to join the community of practice or sign up to join by going to the URL on the screen there. And I'll make sure that Caroline and Christina send that link out to everyone. It's basically once you let us know your name and contact information through that form, we will create an account for you on the community of practice, and you'll start being a part of the conversation of this Affiliations Universe of Learning partnership. So I guess right now I'm gonna open the floor up to questions. And if you have the choice of either unmuting yourself, your audio, if you can find that under the participants link or under your mute, your little microphone, or you can ask a question in the chat box. So we're now offering wait time. Okay, the professional development sessions are all online. Yes, am I reading that right? And are the dates set? Very good. So let me go back here a couple of slides. There we are. The webinars will all be recorded and put online, but we invite people to come live because you'll be able to answer questions. I see someone has annotated right on the slide. I'm going to have to figure out how that, I can't quite see that question. As for the specific schedule, did we decide on a date, Brandon and Tim? Was it Wednesdays? Wednesdays.
We were leaning towards Wednesdays. We need to check a few things with our own schedule first and with the Smithsonian Affiliations team just to make sure everything is set, but it's probably going to be Wednesdays at this point from what we've discussed.
Yeah, and we certainly will try to make it in an afternoon time like this where we can get West Coast participation. So a few more questions are coming in. Is there a deadline to use the funds if awarded? Yes, that is likely to be by October 1st. So the funds get awarded in January of 2018.
Yes.
And so I think we'd prefer if they were used by October 1st of 2018. But there's another round of mini funds the following year. So it might be that you want to wait and apply for the second round, to attend this round of professional development. But then if you are thinking of something specifically for late 2018 or early 2019, there'll be a second round of mini awards available at that time.
There's going to be all sorts of fun new science coming out in the beginning of 2019 with the James Webb Space Telescope.
Right. So there's that too. Let's see. Will you email the grant application information to all of the affiliates? Again, we'll send this this slide. We'll share this group of slides with everyone, and this webinar is recorded. As the grant application comes, as the mini fund award application comes in November, all the requirements will be available to all the people who've signed up for the online community of practice. So that's the key thing right now, is to go to that URL and sign up. Has anybody been able to read? Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. Let's go. Here we go. If two organizations decided to collaborate on a project, can each affiliate apply for funding? I think we're going to have to get back to you on that, Ken. That's certainly not out of the question. I probably need to know more information, and we can talk about that. There's a question about an Aztec NASA Universe of Learning partnership as well. It is similar. This one is targeted for affiliations. The other is essentially the same kind of thing. So if you're members of both communities, you can apply to both opportunities. But you might want to choose which community of practice you participate in. They'll be the same, potentially with this community of practice discussing more ideas for multidisciplinary opportunities for multidisciplinary organizations. Nancy has a question. Is there a focus? There was a, that's right. We would like, we kind of will preference applications that show that they can reach audiences who are under-resourced or underserved by STEM and STEAM learning. That's not an absolute requirement, but it's definitely preferred. And with regard to specific age group requirement, that's really totally up to you. You define whether you want to do a program for adults or a program for families or a program for after school groups, or it's really your decision of how to implement a program. Good. Let's see. Other questions? Comments? Okay. Will you email the grant information? Again, if you join, if you go to the URL that's on the screen right now, where you enter your email, you will all get information about everything that happens with this partnership. But that's the key thing. You need to have entered your information. Right. And I should mention that the application is not yet available. It won't be available until November, after you've participated in the webinars and professional development community of practice. So it's kind of a, the application, the webinars will offer an opportunity to discuss ideas for program models that you might propose. The community of practice will offer an opportunity to discuss those ideas and get new insight. But the application won't open until November. Is this replacing YCCC? No, it's adding to YCCC. This is a new opportunity funded through the NASA Universe of Learning program, and it's built on the model of YCCC, which is why you see similar features. Many of the affiliates have participated in Youth Capture the Colorful Cosmos, where you use Astrophysical Observatory's robotic telescopes with students. Now, you could still propose a program, because those telescopes are also part of NASA's Universe of Learning, but that's just one tiny piece of the Universe of Learning pie, which is much, much bigger than just what folks have done with YCCC. So hopefully that answers that question for those of you who are familiar with that program. This part of Universe of Learning was built on that model, and it has some similar features in terms of you learn about resources, you think about how you might use them in your own context, you propose an actual program, and then you apply for funds to implement that program. Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, let me just stop the recording here.